What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for MLB Tuesday, September 28th.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon.
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to go over my top DFS picks for today's MLB slate.
And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made.
Oh, and good news, guys. Make sure to stay tuned to the very end of this video because we removed the box that was popping up and blocking the lineup. So now you can see a full lineup using these picks that we made in this video if you stay to the very end. Okay, guys, we have a 13-game slate tonight. Bunch of fantastic picks for you. So let's get into it. At the pitcher position, I like Brandon Woodruff pitching against the St. Louis Cardinals. Brandon Woodruff is giving up a .609 OPS versus righties. He's facing 7 righties here tonight. But the reason I like this pick is because the Cardinals have only hit 19 of his last 101 pitches. That's a 188 batting average and a huge sample size. Brandon Woodruff is $10,200 FanDuel salary, 100 more on DraftKings, projected at 37.6 fantasy points here tonight. He has an ERA of 2.52. His record is 9-10 on the season, pitching an average of 95 pitches per game, averaging 39 fantasy points per game. He scored 49, 34, and 24 fantasy points in the last 3 games. And Vegas thinks this is going to be a low-scoring game. 7 runs scored in this game. That's their over-under. So I like Brandon Woodruff here versus the St. Louis Cardinals. Now I also like Walker Buehler and Yu Darvish. Yu Darvish, interestingly enough, the Dodgers have only hit 12 of his last 78 pitches for a 154 batting average, and that's a pretty big sample size. And Yu Darvish is $8,800 FanDuel salary and 500 more on DraftKings. Projected at 40.5 fantasy points here tonight. He has an ERA of 4.21. Record is 8-10 on the season. Pitching an average of 93 pitches per game. Averaging 32 fantasy points per game. He scored 25, 52, and -3 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I think if you want to save some salary at the pitcher position, I think Yu Darvish is an interesting play here. So I like Yu Darvish here versus the Los Angeles Dodgers. Okay, let's take a look at the catcher first base position. Let's start it off with a super value play. I like Max Stassi with a 49% batting advantage over a low salary pitcher, AJ Alexy. Max Stassi is batting a .763 OPS versus righties, and AJ Alexy, he pitches his worst ball versus righty batters, 58% worse than his other pitches, giving up a .896 OPS versus righties. Now I like this pick because Max Stassi is only $2,100 FanDuel salary, 600 more on DraftKings, projected at 11.6 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 8 fantasy points per game on the season, and he scored 9, 29, and 0 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like Max Stassi as a value play here versus AJ Alexy.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching.
If you want to enter the drawing for $25 PayPal,
all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won.
And we'll send you $25 PayPal.
So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
And the other value play that I like is Trey Mancini with a 74% batting advantage over a pretty good pitcher, Chris Sale. Trey Mancini, he's batting a .911 OPS versus lefties, 24% better than his batting versus righties. And Chris Sale, he pitches 50% worse to righties as he does lefties, giving up a .771 OPS versus righties. So even though Chris Sale is a good pitcher, the reason I like this pick is because Trey Mancini is 11 for 30, batting a .367 batting average and a 1.020 OPS versus Sale, and that's a pretty big sample size. And I like this pick also because he's only $2,900 FanDuel salary and only $500 more on DraftKings. So I like that price on both sites. Projected at 11 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 10 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 6, 9, and 0 fantasy points in the last 3 games. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 9.5 runs scored in this game. That's their over-under. So I like Trey Mancini here versus Chris Sale. Okay, let's take a look at the second base position. I like Jorge Polanco with a 31% batting advantage over a low-salary pitcher, Tyler Alexander. Jorge Polanco is batting 11% better versus lefty pitchers, batting a .803 OPS versus lefties, and Tyler Alexander is giving up a .899 OPS versus switch hitters. Jorge Polanco is 5 for 9, batting a .556 batting average and a 1.112 OPS versus Alexander. He's $3,500 FanDuel salary, $1,400 more on DraftKings, projected at 9.4 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 11 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 3, 12, and 0 fantasy points in his last 3 games. So I like Jorge Polanco here versus Tyler Alexander. Okay, let's take a look at the third base position. I got a stud pick for you. I like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. batting against Jameson Taillon. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is batting a .901 OPS versus righties, and Jameson Taillon, he's giving up a .731 OPS versus righties. But Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is 3 for 6, batting .500 with a 1.667 OPS versus Taillon. And Guerrero Jr. is $4,400 FanDuel salary, $1,900 more on DraftKings, projected at 10.3 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 13 fantasy points per game on the season. He's been in a slump, scoring 0, 3, and 0 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I think this is a good spot for Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and Vegas thinks there's going to be 9.5 points scored in this game, or 9.5 runs scored in this game. That's their over-under, so I think he has a bounce-back game here. So I like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. here versus Jameson Taillon.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. You can try the Position Optimizer, where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new Player Trends tool, where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, let's take a look at the shortstop position. One of my favorite value plays this year has been Isaiah Keener-Falefa with an 11% batting advantage over a low-salary pitcher, Packy Naughton. Isaiah Keener-Falefa is batting 11% better versus lefty pitchers, batting a .748 OPS versus lefties. And Packy Naughton, he's giving up a .804 OPS versus righties. There's no at-bats versus Naughton yet, but Isaiah Keener-Falefa is only $2,800 FanDuel salary, $800 more on DraftKings, projected at 9.7 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 8 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 7, 0, and 12 fantasy points in his last 3 games. So I like Isaiah Keener-Falefa here versus Packy Naughton. I also like Trevor Story with a 50% batting advantage over Patrick Corbin. Trevor Story is batting 23% better versus lefty pitchers, batting a 1.001 OPS versus lefties. And Patrick Corbin, he's pitching 27% worse to righties as he does lefties, giving up a .903 OPS versus righties. Trevor Story is 8 for 27, that's a .296 batting average, and a 1.091 OPS versus Corbin, and that's a big sample size, and he's $3,800 FanDuel salary, $800 more on DraftKings, projected at 11.8 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 11 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 15, 0, and 0 fantasy points in the last 3 games. But I also like this pick because Vegas thinks this is going to be a high-scoring game. 11.5 runs scored in this game. That's their over-under, so it's a good game to stack. So I like Trevor Story here versus Patrick Corbin. Okay, moving on to the outfield position. I like Whit Merrifield with a 26% batting advantage over Aaron Savale. Whit Merrifield is batting a .739 OPS versus righties, and Aaron Savale, he pitches his worst ball versus righty batters, 28% worse than his other pitches, giving up a .835 OPS versus righties. Whit Merrifield is 3 for 6, batting .500 with a 1.667 OPS versus Savale. He's $3,400 FanDuel salary, $1,300 more on DraftKings, projected at 10.8 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 11 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 0, 18, and 3 fantasy points in his last 3 games. So I like Whit Merrifield here versus Aaron Savale. I also like Lamont Wade Jr. with an 82% batting advantage over Luke Weaver. Lamont Wade Jr. is batting 57% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .808 OPS versus righties. And Luke Weaver, he pitches his worst ball versus lefty batters, giving up a .980 OPS versus lefties. There's no at-bats versus Weaver yet, and Lamont Wade Jr. is $3,400 FanDuel salary, $900 more on DraftKings, projected at 9.2 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 10 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 6, 0, and 0 fantasy points in the last 3 games. But the splits are good here, so I like Lamont Wade Jr. here versus Luke Weaver.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smickety smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.